Three, two, one. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameDay.com. We are here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening. And man, oh man, do we have a lot to talk about. We are so close to Florida State and Mike Norvell hitting the practice fields, which will actually happen tomorrow in the late afternoon window. We just got done with a wild big-time meeting at Florida State between the Board of Trustees that we'll be discussing and giving our thoughts on. Florida State landed Charles Lester. We were there for that commitment, so we'll be discussing that and also a few things that he told us about a few targets he's after, including five-star safety KJ Bolden, which he'll be picking on Saturday. We will be giving our prediction there on who he'll be selecting to go to for his future university. Florida State landed multiple commits too within the week. Big-time USC former commit ends up going to pick Alex Atkins in the offensive line. So we'll be discussing that along with a few other guys. And then at the very end, we'll be talking about some of the press conference quotes that Dustin got with after the opening press conference to the season from Mike Norvell and all the coaching assistants. And at the very end, we'll be talking our fall camp defensive preview as a loaded podcast. So make sure you sit back, relax, hit the like button on YouTube. Let me introduce the guys with me. It's Austin Veazey, our lead basketball writer, at the very top. And also down below is our editor-in-chief, Dustin Lewis. Gentlemen, how we doing? We're here, baby. It's almost football season in Tallahassee.
I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, with the way today went, football season has officially begun. I know the team's not going to get to hit the field tomorrow, but I mean, man, the steady amount of news flowing out of Tallahassee right now after meeting with the coaches earlier and also the Board of Trustees meeting and the comments that were made there, it feels like we're directly in the middle of the year.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a week so far, and I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, no, I think we are just getting started. There's a lot to talk about on this show tonight. It feels good. I've already felt like we've been in football season. I've been at training camp going on the 7th day tomorrow morning here in Tampa. So I definitely feel the heat. It's good to have the cleats on, have that grass in the morning, smell it, feels good. And it's going to feel good to be out there tomorrow, which I'm heavily looking forward to. Going to run two camps in one day. We're going to see if we'll survive or not, but super excited to be up there in Tallahassee for when the Seminoles hit the practice fields for the first time in 2023. Before we get started, make sure you guys, if you're on YouTube right now, I can't stress enough, hit that like button, hang out with us, share with your friends. If you're on Facebook too, hit the share button, hit the like button. Appreciate everybody coming to hang out with us the last couple of shows. This is going to be the case for the next, God knows what, 9 months it feels like. Definitely if Florida State can make a run here, we will be here live every Wednesday night along with instant reactions immediately on site after games for you guys. So a ton of coverage coming this upcoming season, and it's all heavily here on Hear the Spear and our YouTube channels, Facebook and Twitter as well. So make sure you guys are locked in there. But let's get started. We don't have enough time to waste, gentlemen. Let's jump into Charles Lester's commitment. Florida State lands 5-star cornerback. Mike Norvell gets his guy. We saw a little bit of some, rumors flying. We were hearing things of Deion Sanders, obviously, too. We saw Charles Lester go take that last-minute visit. I know he was also with his teammates as well, but comes back home and then ends up picking the Seminoles. Dustin, you and I were on site there for what was
pretty insane ceremony.
Absolutely insane. I think it was delayed a good 45 minutes. We're waiting in the parking lot. We were told, here, come get some shots of Charles coming through the parking lot. And we waited out there for 30 minutes. And then we had about a 10-minute walk-in. It felt like a WWE kind of walk-in or a boxing match walk-in with how much media was in front of him. A lot of his friends, family, teammates, even now Tribe 24 fellow commit Luke Kromenhoek also in attendance, and his family as well. So it was just filled heavily, definitely FSU wise, but still had to wait until the very last moment when he came out and they took away the drapes, and boom, he comes out with a crown on his head. He's got an FSU jersey on. He's got a lit up spear, which was pretty badass, and comes out with the war chant rocking. But a big time commit for the Florida State Seminoles in this 2024 class, Dustin.
Huge win for Florida State, and this is an announcement that's going to be remembered for a long time, especially if Charles Lester goes on to become a star at FSU. And, we talked about it extensively last week, and that we really felt like, the late push by Colorado and everything like that was really just Charles Lester building up some hype before committing to Florida State. And I mean, that's exactly really what it ended up being. And, to get this one in the boat, this is one that FSU's been waiting on for a while. Charles Lester is going to jump right in and start recruiting for this 2024 class. We spoke to him right after the ceremony, and someone that he mentioned immediately, KJ Bolden, who obviously we're going to talk about later tonight and who's going to be committing on Saturday at 7:30 Eastern. But Lester making him a big target. So I think, getting a 5-star cornerback is only going to help in your pursuit of the number one safety in the country. And then just Lester by himself. I mean, you're bringing in a really elite athlete who has been a top national recruit over the past couple of years. Florida State's invested a lot of resources into this kid, from the coaching staff to having even the current commits reaching out to him before he committed. And they're really excited about this. We heard Lester talk about potentially playing on both sides of the ball at Florida State. We'll see how that progresses moving forward. But, I mean, it's certainly an interesting possibility.
We saw a video come out, too, of Lester having that silent commit happen with Mike Norvell, and then also the coaching staff being around him, walking out of the office of Norvell. And, he's been committed for a good little while here, and it's given him some time, too, to do some things behind the scenes. And, when we talk about KJ Bolden later on in this episode, we'll see how much of an impact that makes on potentially grabbing a big-time, really talented player with Bolden up there in Georgia. Being him in the fold, you kind of get a feeling of a Derwin James, Jalen Ramsey-esque type of tandem here. That's the amount of talent that you're bringing to your defensive backfield. But for Florida State to be able to solidify a guy that loved Florida State and have those relationships, that's what it came down to. Lester and his family absolutely love Mike Norvell, and they believe in the process and what he's doing and building a program the right way. And they're willing to be there and commit and go further in that and, hopefully bring championships. That's something Lester talked about. He believes heavily that Florida State's going to win the national championship in 2023. And he sure does have the confidence too. Once he arrives, he'll be bringing some rings as well. But, it came down to relationships, man. And, I understand you got to have the hype there a little bit. We kind of felt the same way if you listened to our episode last week, that this is just something that, the kid wanted to build some hype. I would do the same thing. I would drive it like crazy. They would hate me for how much I would continue to just keep on building it and try to have some kind of anticipation over my 2-star status. But still, Charles Lester did his thing. It was a great ceremony. It was fun. That was one of my first experiences being at one of those, but full of hype. And you could just tell too how much of an impact he makes in that Sarasota community, man. They were all over him, dancing with the kids. Had multiple aunts come up to me and, they were smirking a little bit when I would say, how are you feeling about today? And they're already wearing FSU gear. So it just felt like it was going to be the Seminoles throughout it. It just was like, all right, when is it going to happen type of deal.
We've also got to give a shout out to your roommate, our cameraman, who did an awesome job with the live stream. But, along with Charles Lester, you mentioned having Luke Kromenhoek there. I think it says a lot about this guy and, his future as a leader at Florida State, to make a 7-hour trip down from Savannah, Georgia, all the way to Sarasota to support one of his future teammates' announcement. And you can tell that these guys are pretty close. Charles Lester had him come up on stage after and, they both gave each other some words of encouragement, dapped each other up. And it seems like they're really excited for the future of this Tribe 24 class moving forward. But I mean, just for Luke to do that, you don't see that from a lot of guys, a lot of high school recruits across the country. He's not just spitting out words. He's going out and proving what he wants to do in this Tribe 24 class and also bring to Florida State once he and the remainder of this group get here. So, I mean, for him to make that trip and then also directly after the ceremony, begin to head to Tallahassee for the Seminole Showcase the next day, says a lot about him and, the people that he has around him. And I think you've got to be excited, not only with this addition of Charles Lester, but also with what you've seen from your future quarterback throughout the summer.
Yep. Luke being very hands-on in this, and, he's not done yet. A lot of these guys in the class, including Cam Davis, doing a lot of work behind the scenes as well. So it just goes to show too what Mike Norvell's putting in his future locker room with leaders. highly social and getting work done and helping this coaching staff, because a lot of players like listening to other players too and getting their thoughts. So big time commitment for Florida State, and that's going to be a huge bell cow for the Florida State Seminoles to use in this next year before he comes into Tallahassee. Charles Lester was not the only commit, Dustin. It's been a busy last couple of days, nonstop. There's no breaks. We just could go ahead and say there's no more breaks here until hopefully we get to February or something like that. And I'm fine with that. All gas, no breaks type of deal. But nonetheless, we've got some commits to talk about. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Florida State and Coach Atkins. I mean, it just is what it is at this point. And I think, too, FSU fans, no matter kind of who it is, if it's a project player, a guy that you're going to have to develop for 2 years or so, the FSU fans believe in anyone that kind of Atkins has taken at this point just because of his track record and what he's been able to do. But Florida State takes USC offensive line commit from Lincoln Riley, West Coast. Manasi Atiti comes over, a 4-star offensive lineman to Florida State. Talented here. I think, Dustin, were you there whenever he came and visited Tallahassee?
I was not.
Okay. I was going to say what he looked like. Did he look big? But yeah, big time commit though for Florida State. Thoughts on him, and then we'll go through the next two.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of got overshadowed a little bit because of Lester's ceremony the night prior. But, I mean, this is another big one for Florida State, and we've really seen FSU begin to fill out this Tribe 24 Trenches class over the last month, adding ITT to Jonathan Daniels and Ty Hilton, and, we'll get to him in a minute, but Jaden Todd as well went from 0 commits on the offensive line at the beginning of June to now, at the beginning of July to now 4, just, a couple days into August. So a lot of work for FSU on the offensive line recently, but ITT, a guy with all the potential in the world, coming in with a really impressive frame. And this is another guy that Florida State's recruiting from the international ranks, originally from Africa, and, moved over to the United States to play out his college career. So, I mean, even though he is playing high school ball up in California and ended up committing to USC, location doesn't really seem to matter to him, being a guy who's not even from this country. And, it's going to be a big one for Florida State moving forward. We saw Lucas Simmons come in last cycle, international recruit from Sweden. Florida State really starting to recruit some of these guys who are originally from other countries and have a lot of potential. I think that's what you're going to see with ITT, someone that's going to come in, probably slot in as an offensive tackle, and, I mean, could also play on the interior for Florida State, but a pickup that I really like a ton.
My goodness, VZ, they're not allowing you to eat in the comments. I mean, they're ripping you apart. My man just got off of work. He grinded, and now he's got to come on here for an hour-and-a-half podcast. Got to let the man have a snack.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and you don't want me talking recruiting anyways. So just I'm done eating now. Let's survive. And the old fans know I used to eat all the time on the podcast. So get over it.
That's right. Our video watchers are a little bit different than our audio. The audio people don't even know you're eating right now, which is perfect.
It's true. Well, I'm done now, so it doesn't matter.
There you go. Perfect. Well, yeah, we don't need you talking recruiting. We'll stick to Dustin on this one. So let's keep talking here about a few other commits. Florida State landed linebacker Tamir Hickman Collins and also offensive lineman Jaden Todd. Massive player, Dustin. That is a big boy that the Florida State Seminoles. I looked at the Mike Norvell picture next to Jaden. That's just it's a
silly
freak of nature, man. That is a big boy. As big, but yeah, I don't know which one you want to start with, but chronologically, if you want to start with Hickman Collins.
Yeah, Hickman Collins, really an under the radar linebacker prospect that Florida State picked up over the weekend to add to a 3-star linebacker, Jaden Parrish, who's been committed since earlier this year. Florida State got him on campus over the weekend for the Seminole Showcase. He went through a workout, and it sounded like the staff saw what they needed to see to give him the green light. So, I mean, still an emerging recruit on the national stage, and, we'll see how he does during his senior season. And going over to Todd, I mean, you're talking about not a really good offensive line class around the area in this cycle. So to find someone who's 6'6", 315 pounds, and has only played 1 year of high school football, I mean, there's a lot to develop with him. He chose Florida State over some offers from Ivy League schools, also had Virginia Tech, UAB, Liberty, some lower Power 5. So this is another one where there's a lot of potential, and we've seen what Florida State's coaching staff has been able to do as far as Atkins molding some of these guys ever since he got to Florida State. Todd's someone that you're going to be molding over the next 2-3 years to hopefully eventually turn him into a starting caliber lineman at the the college level. But he reminds me a lot of the take in the 2023 class, Chris Andreotto, who recently enrolled at FSU for the summer semester. And, we're going to get our first look at him tomorrow when FSU comes out for preseason practices. But he's another guy who has the frame, very smart, had multiple Ivy League offers before Florida State came calling, and then eventually chose the Seminoles. Two guys with very good instincts and that can develop over the coming years and potentially be diamonds in the rough. You're muted.
Damn it. I was just like, what the heck am I doing here? But yeah, this is a good look at Jaden Todd. Big boy. And I think that's a good comparison there. Smart player, but just looking at the physical attributes, though, you can go and sign me up. Sign me up. And
you're really seeing that Coach Atkins has a type.
He does have a type. Well, there he is. Yeah, speaking of the devil. He's like, yeah, this is my guy. But, I mean, that body already looks college level to me. I mean, that's SEC Big Ten size right there, if you don't tell me, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, that's a nice commitment there for Florida State. And if they're ever putting on the all-white, I mean, can we go ahead and already say that they're most likely committing to the Seminoles at this point? I feel like whenever they're in hype videos like that and doing promos after their visits, it's almost like a 90% hit rate at this point.
Yeah, but I believe in this 2024 class with the 4 guys that FSU has committed, I mean, none of them are shorter than 6'4". So, I mean, we're really seeing Florida State target these bigger offensive linemen, guys that can come into Florida State already built up, and then, they can transition them into that college strength and conditioning program and refine their bodies a little bit. But, I mean, size is one thing you can't teach.
Nope, you cannot do that. Genetics help play a big-time role in that as well. But, yeah, some nice commits there for Florida State, but heavily led there by Charles Lester, and, him getting into some ears for some of these guys and, helping build what Norvell and the staff are trying to do. And he's only continuing to do that. He's only got a few more days of being able to recruit a certain guy that I think everybody is here to help and also chat about, as our chat is absolutely blowing up about it. But KJ Bolden, 5-star defensive back from Georgia, offers from everywhere across the country, but it seems like it's slimming down to a few schools, including Florida State and Auburn here potentially at the end. It really just goes to show, I mean, we've talked about him the last couple of episodes, but just seeing what Florida State has been able to do relationship-wise. KJ Bolden, this is his favorite school, his number one school. He's wanted to play at this school, but can they get him over here? And I know there's a lot of NIL stuff that goes into it. Auburn is probably one of the best colleges right now that has been ahead in the game on NIL. Florida State kind of catching up here and, starting to really make their presence felt, adding in the battles and the success that they've had. But now with Florida State and Florida, now they like Florida as the state, not the Gators, but Florida now allowing these coaches to go in and kind of facilitate and help out in some ways of the NIL side of things with some of these other organizations. It helps in Florida State's favor, but can it be enough to land someone this talented? Can Charles Lester get into his ear enough? That's something Lester talked about when we talked to him after the commitment. Who are you after? Is there somebody you want to get in the Tribe 24 right away? And it was KJ Bolden. He said he's been in his ear for a while now. And, we've talked with Luke Kromenhoek too, and he's been after him as well. But how much does it take? How have they done enough to do this? And, this commitment's going to happen on Saturday at 7:00. We'll have full coverage of that. We're hoping to also do another live stream on here. We won't be on site, but we're hoping to have another live stream for you guys on this channel. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you get notified when we do go live, because the last one we had about 7,000 people there for that Charles Lester commitment. So I highly suggest you jump onto our YouTube and subscribe so you get notified. But Dustin, take it away. This is a big time recruit, man. If Coach Surtain does this without even showing a snap of football in Tallahassee on the collegiate level, he's got to be like the whisperer, man. I don't know, but yeah, give it to us.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to feel pretty decent about Florida State's chances going into this announcement. Like you said, it really seems like this one's starting to come down to just a couple of schools. That includes the Seminoles, Georgia, Ohio State, and then Auburn is making a late push for KJ Bolden after hosting him for an unofficial visit last weekend. I mean, these have kind of been the top schools throughout the recruitment, jockeying back and forth. But it just feels like ever since Florida State got Bolden on campus for an unofficial visit back in June, the tide has slowly begun to shift in their favor a little bit. Confidence has begun to build from the Florida State side. But, I mean, at the same time, you're also seeing it confidence from the Auburn side, confidence from the Georgia side. I think the only team that isn't confident right now is the Ohio State side. So a lot of people are confident going into Saturday. And, a lot of programs have put their best foot forward in recruiting KJ Bolden, the 5-star prospect, number 1 safety in the country. But Florida State, I mean, they do have the dream school factor playing in their favor here. Mike Norvell and staff and Coach Surtain as well have done a really good job recruiting Bolden. And then you mentioned it as well. A lot of these Tribe 24 guys have been going after Bolden. After his unofficial visit back in June, he actually mentioned Cam Davis and Landon Thomas by name as 2 guys who from the Peach State as well as Bolden coming after him and recruiting him. And he mentioned Charles Lester at the time, who has now committed to Florida State. Like you said, Lester doing what he can to get Bolden to join him. Luke Kromenhoek has been recruiting everybody to join him in this Tribe 24 class. So Florida State really attacking this one from all kinds of fronts. And are we making predictions right now?
I mean, we did last week with Lester. This one is what do you think, Dustin? We're both on the same boat here where it's a little bit more of a risky prediction than last week. We felt pretty confident in the one with Lester, but this one's a risky one. So you did put one in Discord, though.
I did.
You did put one in there. So if you're in our Discord, make sure you guys go jump over there. But I mean, I feel like we have to. And if it can't just only be us, the chat also needs to put in their prediction too. So it's not going to be just us. And don't worry, we can grab the screenshots from all of y'all too. So it goes both ways.
Well, yeah. Like I said, I feel pretty good about Florida State's chances in this recruitment. Things have been trending in the Seminoles' direction over the past couple of weeks. I actually traded a couple of messages with KJ Bolden the other night and was just trying to get his comments, his thoughts on Florida State, adding Charles Lester, and he responded and told me it put them in a good place with me for sure. So, I mean, I definitely think that's something that he's thinking about. It shows that Florida State's going to be able to add elite talent alongside KJ Bolden as he begins his college career. And, right now, as we said, Wednesday evening, I've had a couple of sources inform me the same thing. They feel pretty confident about Bolden at this time. So, I mean, I'm going to ride with those guys. And, KJ Bolden to Florida State on Saturday. We'll see if it happens.
Woo. We will see. We'll see. I feel the same way. I feel like Florida State has done a phenomenal job with this. And I think with the NIL factor, Battle's End doing a great job there. It only increases the confidence level, at least for me on that end. So Coach Surtain, I mean, it's not over yet whatsoever, but I think this one, we're going to have some things trickling here probably tomorrow and then definitely Saturday morning, afternoon. But that's what you get when you deal with a player of this caliber. So no shocker there. We'll be fully prepared for it, but we're hoping to hopefully get a full coverage for you guys here on our YouTube channel. So make sure you guys are subscribed and also hit that like button because it will show up on y'all's YouTube feed immediately once we do go live and we have a full-on reaction to KJ Bolden's commitment. So should be a fun Saturday. Make sure you guys are tuned to that on Saturday at 7:00.
Yeah. And like you said, if Florida State's able to pull this one off, we're already starting to hear a little bit of criticism about Coach Surtain on the trio entering June. It's like, man, the guy just got here in January and is working on building these relationships. But I mean, now you see it Rydarius Morgan, Ricky Knight, Charles Lester, potentially KJ Bolden. We saw Jamari Howard return to Florida State's campus over the weekend for an unofficial visit during the Seminole Showcase. That's going to be someone they push to get an official visit from during the fall. So Florida State, Coach Surtain, they're doing all right.
Yeah, I think they are. And not just going to pressure anybody here just to get some free likes, but we did say if you want Charles Lester to pick FSU, hit the like button. So, I mean, I'm not pressuring anybody, but if you want to think in that scenario, you might as well hit the like button here on this live, as we still got a lot to discuss. We've got Board of Trustees to go over. We've got fall camp preview from Mike Norvell and coaching assistants. Dustin said that he spent quite a lot of time with Randy Shannon, someone who's also been criticized on the recruiting trail as well. But then we're going to jump into our fall camp defensive preview. Gentlemen, we were all on the Board of Trustees live stream today, watching the first 30 minutes of we don't know what the heck they were talking about type of stuff with budget reports and expenses, and we need money here and that, and nursing stuff. I don't know, engineering. I don't know where we're going, but once it got close to some ACC talk from President Richard McCullough, then all ears, everybody, that live stream started turning up to 2,000, 3,000 viewers on there. But yeah, I mean, we'll just jump into a discussion right now. Austin, I know you've been keeping this very close too and watching it as it unfolds as well. But yeah, Florida State, and just going off of the theme of it, Florida State and the Board of Trustees, they're all practically in alignment, along with Florida State's athletic director, Michael Alford. They're all in alignment that they want to get out of this ACC. They want to get out of this conference. And it's very apparent that they're very concerned about the money lost and being put behind other colleges, definitely in their region here. I mean, you look at the Southeast, definitely this SEC too. You're behind a lot of those schools that you're competing with recruiting wise, and you're also kind of getting put behind too on the NIL side of things. So there were some really good points being brought up, but this was heavily on the media rights and the ACC and them lacking compared to the other conferences, the other big two, which is the Big Ten and the SEC. But open discussion here. Y'all's biggest takeaways, I guess, from what we heard in that about hour and a half meeting.
I think it's safe to say it's happening. As they said in the meeting, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I'm still of the opinion I think it's going to happen in these next 2 weeks. To me, this was the culmination of a year's worth of research into the grant of rights and into all these documents with lawyers and attorneys and everything else. Seeing what they can get, seeing what their options are. They've been working behind the scenes with the ACC, I'm sure, over this last year. Florida State's probably got, a set of guidelines and a set of, I don't want to say rules, but they have certain demands that they want, and the ACC just hasn't been willing to give that. And I think today was the warning shot. We have 2 weeks before the deadline of August 15th, and the chairman even said it at the end of, I'm sure you'll hear from us soon. We'll make a decision on it. I still think it's going to happen. I think it was a culmination. This is the final warning shot. If you don't get it together in 2 weeks, we will find a way out of this conference. And they said it, yesterday on a live stream that the grant of rights isn't the document that they're worried about. So Florida State's discussed all their options, and they're not just going to sit back and lose, at a minimum, 30 minimum every year. It was, I've got to find it again, but it was trustee Justin Roth that said, staying in this conference is equivalent of a death by 1,000 cuts, and each cut is a $30 million cut over the next 13 years. It's a hell of a statement. Like that's, and it was such a crazy conference. It seemed like so off the cuff, but at the same time, it all seemed very aligned because everyone had something they wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
There was someone that brought up Title IX. There was someone that brought up all the women's sports, all the non-revenue sports. This was very, very calculated move by Florida State. They're not afraid of being the big bad wolf to blow the house down. Like I said, I think this is the final warning shot, and 2 weeks from now, we may be looking at a different conference for Florida State.
Yeah, this is the most public comments that we've seen Florida State make so far when it comes to actually exploring their future outside of the ACC. And I mean, I was surprised. Honestly, I was surprised with how deep they went into it. But it's clear that this has become a major source of frustration for Florida State. They've done all they can to work with the ACC on a solution, and clearly it didn't work behind closed doors because now they brought it out into the open. We're going to see if the Atlantic Coast Conference responds to what happened in Tallahassee today moving forward. But Florida State is looking for a way out. We heard former FSU quarterback Drew Weatherford, now a member of the Board of Trustees. I was very impressed with his comments. But like you guys were saying, $30 million per year. And that's not just next year or the year after or the year after that. That's for 13 more years in the ACC's grant of rights until it expires in 2036. What's 30 times 13, guys? It's $390 million that we're talking about over the next decade plus that Florida State would be separated by from, like you said, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, all of the schools in this region that are either members of the SEC or, the Big Ten. So this is a necessary move for Florida State. And to put it out in the open like this, it shows how serious they are about getting out of this conference. And I think, like you said, Austin, it wouldn't surprise me if there's an announcement within the next 2 weeks. But I think at the bare minimum, we're going to hear something before August 15th, 2024 about Florida State leaving the ACC. It is very interesting because the Big Ten is set to add USC and UCLA at the beginning of the 2024 season. You would think feasibly, if the conference is looking to expand multiple teams, they probably would want to bring all of those teams in at one time. So it's definitely an interesting topic to continue perusing for sure.
And that's why I'm so certain that it happens this year. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense that if the Big Ten is the move, which is what I've constantly been hearing, is that Big Ten is the preferred destination. It's just more money. If they want to make that move, it makes sense to do it all at once when you're already bringing in USC and UCLA. You bring in Florida State and Clemson. Now you have an entire national conference where you have literally coast-to-coast coverage of any team. You're going to be able to broadcast whatever game you want in prime time. It's the ideal scenario for the Big Ten. And, I'm sure they're licking their chops going, man, we could have, 8:30 kickoff of Florida State and USC under the Big Ten logo. Like, there's gonna be so many great matchups if it ends up happening.
And I think off the field, that's exactly what Florida State is looking for academically, especially with President Richard McCullough recently coming in 2021. He's putting an increased focus on the research funding and just the educational aspect of Florida State. We've continued to see the university climb in the national rankings. 13 of the 14 schools in the Big Ten are members of the AAU, which, is big when it comes to that research funding and educational aspect. Very prestigious universities. Moving to the Big Ten would help Florida State continue to elevate academically as well as athletically.
And to your point about academically, Florida State's now a top 20 public institution. Like, they've made so many strides since even when we were in school just 4 or 5 years ago. They've come such a long way in that regard, and that's only going to help their standing in the Big Ten if and when they get all of this research funding.
Like Richard had said, also Alfred was in on this, but speaking about their situation in the ACC, President McCullough said, I believe that FSU at some point will have to consider very seriously leaving the ACC unless there was a radical change to the revenue distribution. And this has been the heavy topic for a long while. It's been year after year after year, but it does seem like there's been some accelerated move. When you got Alfred in your administration, things move quickly. We've seen that. I mean, it's right in front of our eyes. A lot of women's sports improving their, a lot of their buildings, along with their, their facilities have been improved, along with Florida State footballs. We look at basketball too, Austin, looking at that training center, the practice training center for Leonard Hamilton's basketball team, that's getting improved right now as we speak. 2 years ago too, Alfred was redoing Florida State's practice fields, getting those better enhanced there. So there's a lot of things. And now you're looking at the football only facility that Florida State's pushing towards. But the biggest thing that I got from the Board of Trustees too, is that they're having to do a lot of fundraising. They're having to fundraise a lot of this money. Why not make it easier on yourself? And why keep on trying these things and having to push? Why not make it easier and have this money just flow to you, and you can push this anywhere across your whole entire university, and then you can sprinkle that too also to your athletic department. So, it was good to see a lot of the Board of Trustees. I think everybody was in full agreement here that a move needs to be done earlier rather than later, and just continuously losing that $30 million a year. It's not a good, capable measurement of what Florida State as a program wants to do moving forward, it just doesn't make a whole ton of sense. But, everybody can be about it. They would love to do this. It would be nice to get this done, but still, you've still got a GOR that you've got to figure out and get out of. But you've also got to have someone on the outside, like a big time media corporation, like an ESPN or a Fox, to come in and help you do this. And or really specifically too, you've got to have other teams in the conference step up and make a move as well. That's probably the biggest factor here. You've got to have a Clemson. You would like to see Clemson make a move here in the coming weeks. More maybe specifically, you'd like to have North Carolina. That'd be a huge one. If you can get a swing like that, some of your biggest college brands and universities on board there, the ACC is in brutal trouble then. It's squashed. And we already know the ACC is squashed. It's just a matter of when. But you've really got to have some other colleges now step up to the plate and make some moves here.
I don't think they would have said what they said today if they didn't already have a plan to get out of the grant of rights. Like you don't make statements like McCullough saying what he did with unless there's a radical change to distribution, we'll have to seriously consider leaving. You don't say that unless you've already figured that plan out.
If another university's told you, at least. I mean, you did it publicly in front of you. You're trying to, I think they're still hoping for another university to come in hand with them.
Maybe they're not, because I'm sure there's some of the tobacco road schools that'll be perfectly fine just, sticking with what they've known for 60, 70 years.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it's everybody too trying to figure out really what's in those grant of rights. Like, you can't even, I don't think you can even bring a phone in there when you're looking at the article pages. Like, there's so many question marks that, we can speak of it. We can think about maybe what's happening here, but I'm sure there's 30,000 other things that are kind of barricading Florida State in this situation. But I still think they need other universities from the ACC to go in hand here and just explode this thing and get out of it type of deal.
One thing we do know is, they didn't just start this research. President McCullough said this has been going on for well over a year. So they're very well versed in this topic at this point. And it really feels like they have a plan of attack at the very least that they're getting ready to unfold behind the scenes. I mean, they even said on the stream, whether it's plan A, plan B, or plan C, they're going to figure out this revenue gap one way. And I really do think it's going to take leaving the ACC, because they're not going to be able to fulfill that 30 million gap between the Big Ten and the SEC. That's only going to continue to rise because both of those conferences renegotiate their TV deals once again before 2036 when the ACC renegotiates theirs. So that money will just continue to climb. And I thought it was a very interesting point from President McCullough to bring up some of the women's teams, the basketball team, the softball team, the soccer team, mention some of their accomplishments, because if you're down by 390 million or more over 13 years, like he said, I mean, it's really hurting not only football, but also in NIL and coaching salaries and building facilities. He said that would affect the Title IX sports, as more drastically than how it would even affect football. So we're not just talking about FSU football being behind. We're talking about across the board athletically, the entire program being behind two mega conferences that are being built.
And on the flip side, if I forget the exact number off the top of my head, but I believe they said through the boosters, they fundraised 77 million. If you can keep that kind of, cash flow while combining that with, say, a Big Ten or SEC media deal, that's a ton of funding that you could put in all these other sports and continue to have, arguably the best women's sports program in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the women's sports are incredible in Tallahassee, and they continue to perform year after year after year after year. So it's not just, your football, you got your basketball, you got your baseball, your revenue driving ones, but it just goes to show too, the other sports across the whole entire university really does perform at a high caliber. So, I mean, I specifically too, just going off of personal opinion, I think Florida State's better fit, definitely geography wise, putting them in the SEC. I like that. Easier to travel, easier to get to games, and you're already heavily recruiting against these other teams and the Southeast anyways. It just makes better sense for me. We'll see if the SEC is able to make a move here. We're hearing rumors and reports that the Big Ten's trying to jump in here, and they would love to come in right away and get to another state and come down and take Florida State. It would be huge for them. And, Fox would be a big time media deal for the university. But, I think the SEC, though, I think a lot of FSU fans would be in agreement here. SEC would be the conference that you would like to go to. But in the end all be all, it's going to come down to money. And, I think, too, for travel reasons, that will play a factor. But I don't know if that's the driving factor and making your pick and selection here, and that's going to come down to money in the end. But I still think for Florida State recruiting wise and I think SEC is the better move here.
I did think it was very interesting that before they got into all of the ACC discussion, they were talking about Seminole boosters buying 2 planes.
You're going to need it if you're going to the Big Ten.
Instead of chartering flights, which, would save the program a drastic amount of money, I'm sure, over time. So, read the tea leaves.
What's going on here? What was that, $9 million?
Yeah,
$9 million for 2? Yeah.
And it was, too, just one last thing, and we'll move on here, but it was just good to see some of the other board of trustees talking about Mike Norvell, too. And them being honest, saying that they had some big time question marks after the first year with Norvell, after the first season that he had. There was some question marks there, but now looking at it, him going into his 4th season in Tallahassee, there's a lot of belief, and everybody is behind this program, the athletic department, with Michael Alford and the vision that he's brought, because there's answers being made that he's fixed those question marks. Mike Norvell has made these strides, and they like where the program is going, and it also fits down to academically. Florida State is doing a really good job on the academic side, at least we're talking football program-wise. They're making really nice strides there as well, and that's because of Mike Norvell and the emphasis of academics. And, that plays a big-time vital role for a board of trustees for your university.
I think it's because there's finally one aligned vision. For a while they were dealing with Coburn, whose entire goal was just get us out of the red. Then there was Wilcox, who did everything in his power to do everything bad, I feel like. Now you finally have Alford, you have Norvell. We'll see how much longer Coach Hamilton's around. But there's so many powerful voices in that room, and I feel like they're finally aligned with what they all want for the university and their programs. And I think that's huge for a brand like Florida State.
I agree. You really see everyone working as one rather than individuals, and it's really done a lot for the athletic department over the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So we'll keep a close eye on this. It's only going to continue. It's just, if you're not in our Discord, go ahead and join it. It's probably, I would think, before you even wake up, there's 500, 600 messages already sent. But if you guys want to join our Discord, it's down below, free to join. A lot of fall camp updates coming very soon, starting tomorrow. So make sure you guys go down there. If you're on our YouTube, jump down to the description, click the Discord link, free to join. 2,200 plus FSU fans right now, and it's only ramping up. And we've got a channel simply directed towards this realignment, the whole ACC, Big Ten, SEC. There's a whole ton of discussion going there, new tweets, new reports, everything in there. So make sure you guys join our Discord as we head into a busy 2023 season.
One more thing, it's been hilarious seeing the backlash from other ACC media. I don't think they realize how much Florida State does for them.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of the Clemson media who, Clemson's likely leaving if Florida State leaves, to see them be like, oh, what is Florida State doing? Mm-hmm. It's been funny. I can't wait to see what comes these next 2 weeks. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, we'll see. We overheard an August 15th date on there, and, we heard over the Board of Trustees meeting, seems like there's a sense of some urgency here. So we'll see. We'll keep you guys fully updated on the show, along with NoleGameDay.com.
Well, that's my birthday, so if they move on that day, what do you think is more important?
Let me guess. Let me wonder here. What is it? Your 16th birthday? I don't know what else could be more important. 16,
almost
21st. Yeah. Mine's on the 17th. So if they want to actually, I don't want to deal with that on my birthday. Let's just get it done on your birthday and have 2 days to maybe still have life if there's a whole conference change and shift here.
I don't know if that'd be a good birthday or a bad birthday.
No, you wouldn't hate your life. You would have to deliver your food. Your Osakas would have to be delivered to your house. You would not be leaving your computer. Tell the family no hibachi that night. But and speaking of urgency, let's jump into Mike Norvell's press conference, which he has a whole lot of urgency. It seemed like that was the theme, Dustin, today at the press conference as they previewed the 2023 season and fall camp. Mike Norvell saying we get 25 opportunities before game one, and every one of them is going to be critical. There's an incredible sense of urgency for our growth, and I think our team embraces that. Dustin, you were there along with our guy, Tommy. What were some takeaways along with also some of the other assistants you were talking to throughout the afternoon?
I think the main thing for Norvell is he knows coming into this 2023 season that Florida State has an extremely special roster put together that is stacked with experience and some really talented transfers coming in. This is going to be an extremely physical fall camp coming up. A lot of guys going to be battling for starting spots. He mentioned that there are some guys who have started for the program in previous years who might find themselves as backups in 2023, and he's interested to see how the team is going to respond. And it's also just going to come down to complacency because a lot of these guys have went through this grind before. We saw Florida State last season have a very successful year. When you get to week 6 or week 8 against some middling ACC team, it's going to be all about focusing on the fundamentals and just not getting complacent, taking it week by week. And that's another theme for him throughout this upcoming fall camp. So, and he also spoke about Jordan Travis at length and the developments he's made since he got to Florida State, how he believes that he's been one of FSU's most improved players throughout this offseason and thinks he can continue making even bigger strides as he goes into his 6th season of college football. So you can tell that Mike Norvell's very optimistic about what he has at the table in 2023, and these next couple of weeks are going to tell him a lot about his football team.
Definitely a lot of confidence there. Florida State did a big time job of already getting ready immediately after that bowl game against Oklahoma. This team has been getting after it. And, he talked about that at ACC kickoff, Austin. This team has been working quite a bit, and it's been nonstop working on the transfer portal, also doing things in the weight room, out there on the field, working out. There's a lot of things that Florida State, too, as a leaders, Jordan Travis, Jared Verse, Kalen DeLoach, Fabian Lovett, those guys doing off-the-field workouts, planning those accordingly, and building those chemistries with newcomers like a Dustin Hill, like a Keon Coleman, and still building chemistry with Jaheim Bell, too, from South Carolina. There was a lot of work that had to be done, and Florida State has done a good job. If you look at some of these accolades and some preseason recognition that these Seminoles are getting, a majority of those are guys that have transferred into Florida State. And, I think it's really impressive to show, too, what this coaching staff – I don't think we give enough credit for some of these coaching staff. So to this coaching staff that are making some strides and getting these players developed and, getting better year by year by year. Like if we look at Johnny Wilson, I'm expecting a jump in him as well. And just his different kind of attributes that he's going to bring to this offense. You look at Jordan Travis, a big jump last year. Tony Tokar's his first time being a quarterback's coach on that side and seeing the jump that Jordan Travis made. There's a lot to like about this coaching staff and what they've been able to do. Speaking of Jordan Travis, Mike Norvell talking about him as he enters his sixth season of college football. He said, you sit there and you look at the great ones, the guys that are remembered. Those are the guys that embraced improvement throughout the journey. And that's exactly what Jordan Travis is as a person off the field, also a player on the field. And, the strides that he's taken have been monumental to take this program to the next level.
He's just focused on getting better and, with that mantra, improving 1% every day. And we've really seen it pay off ever since Mike Norvell arrived in Tallahassee in 2020. It's been impressive to see. I think a lot of us, a couple of years ago, we weren't very high on Jordan Travis, but he didn't care about the outside opinion. He just listened to himself, went to work every day. And he's proven us wrong. He's proven everybody else wrong. And just his rise now from, what he was a couple of years ago to being a Heisman contender and possibly leaving Florida State as one of the best quarterbacks in program history. It's not something you see often. The kid definitely has, not only on the field being a special talent, but just also what he brings off the field with his mentality, his leadership, the way he goes about things. I mean, it's everything you want in a football player. And it also says a lot about Mike Norvell, Tony Tokars, and even Kenny Dillingham when he was here as well, to continue to stick with him and bring the best out of him.
He has that mindset. Really, the whole team does. And I failed to mention it last week after ACC kickoff. Are they proud that they won 10 games to add another one to the counter? Yes, but we should have been much better than that. And that's been consistent in that desire to keep going, keep getting better, keep getting more consistent. I think this team's going to come out with some fire this camp. They got some things to prove, and they might prove it. Honestly, it's a really talented team.
It's just freaky to think of here. There's a quote here from Mike saying, I told them this morning this is going to be a real camp. We are going to push. There's going to be great competition. There's going to be unbelievable challenges presented. And Dustin, you and I have been to multiple camps of these. These are not easy. I mean, these suck. Like I go to training camp here at the Bucks. I know NFL regulates some things, what you can and can't do. It's a little bit more safer, maybe. I don't know. But FSU ain't getting as many breaks as the Bucks are. I mean, these guys are nonstop. You get one water break. That's it. I mean, yeah, you get some guys who come splash some water here, have some water, have a little teeny little break, Dustin. But it is full force. I don't know if that frozen, like big old box is going to be out there, Dustin. You might need it. I don't know. You should be nervous. You should be nervous going to this. I mean, I'm kind of nervous about going this tomorrow. I might be canceling my plans because it seems like everybody there in attendance is going to be working their ass off. But this is what this camp is going to be. It's going to suck. There's going to be a lot of good competition. I just think the biggest thing too to get out of this, gotta stay healthy, man. If you gotta leave camp staying healthy and being safe. And no matter what, yeah, guys are fighting for starting spots. And, guys are going to put themselves in some positions to make some plays. So there's going to be risk there. But Florida State is going to want to stay healthy, man. They've got to leave this camp with their starting unit, their second-level guys. It's got to be a big-time emphasis, I think, for Mike Norvell, because he's going to press them very, very hard. We know that, and his coaching staff does as well. But got to play it safe, though. Put a few guys in some bubble wrap here after 1 week.
Yeah, injuries are a double-headed sword because, you want to have guys going full, go out there and competing and not holding back, afraid to get injured. But at the same time, I mean, this is football. It's a contact sport, and people are going to get hurt. I mean, that's how football is. You get hit enough times, you're probably going to get hurt at some point. And Florida State, they're just hoping that guys don't suffer any serious injuries, some bangs and bruises. That's typical as you go through these preseason camps. But Florida State last year had, a couple of guys during the preseason suffer season-ending injuries, and also some guys that suffered injuries during scrimmages. You think to Ja'Kai Douglas, he was injured in the preseason and didn't end up coming back until the second half of the regular season. So you want to keep your impact players, your starters, your key guys, like you said, as healthy as possible. But at the same time, injuries are just something that are unpredictable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they are. Anything outside of that from Mike Norvell to some of the coaching assistants? I know you talked with Randy Shannon. You were eating lunch with him during. And also, how was the Sunnies? That's one of our favorite go-tos.
It was Sunnies.
Was it good?
No.
What?
It was Sunnies. It was all right. But okay, here's my main gripe. All right, let's break it down. Here's my main gripe. Sunnies is, and I might have done this in the spring too, but I'll do it every time until they make a switch here. Sunnies is a barbecue company. It used to be good like 10 or 15 years ago. It's kind of trended downhill over the last couple of years, but it's founded in Gainesville, and it's Florida State sponsor. And right across the road, you've got Four Rivers, founded by a Florida State grad with, I'm sorry, Sunnies, much better barbecue.
For sure.
If we're being honest. It's a natural partnership. Now, maybe there might be a little bit of loss in revenue, but it's for the pride. You can't have a company founded in Gainesville sponsoring Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State's got to do a job there. Maybe, I don't know if Four Rivers can jump in here, but, if it ain't going to work for the FSU or partnership there, we will highly take you here at Hear the Spear. So,
yeah. I would love it.
I was pretty upset about it, but I did have a plate.
Of course you did.
Did you still go to the one on Monroe?
I do not go to Sunnies normally.
All right, we can't give out any more free advertising.
Whatever.
But yeah, since the views are racking up and everything, I can't get all these free ads. We got to start. We need a beer sponsor and we need a barbecue sponsor.
That wasn't an ad. That was a don't go there ad.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the Four Rivers, Four Rivers. If you're hearing this, or if you got anybody's got the connections here, DM me the number. We'll talk some business here. We need a few sponsors. Definitely food. Food would definitely be highly advised, but if we can also get some beer involved, I mean, it's just that's gonna be the top podcast in sports.
And while we're talking, what do I have to do to get a Four Rivers in Charlotte? I'm begging.
Tough scenes up there in Charlotte for VZ. All right, let's end off the podcast. We've got defensive fall camp preview, gentlemen. This will be our last fall camp preview before the camp begins, which actually will be tomorrow. So we are really cutting it close here. But Florida State, not a lot of losses here. Not a lot of losses on the defensive side. You lose Jamie Robinson, who I think it's going to play an impact for the first little bit of the season for Florida State. But other than Jamie going off to the Carolina Panthers, Florida State's bringing a good majority of this defense back. At least they're impactful players and highly advertised by Jared Verse. Florida State bringing him to ACC kickoff, a vibrant guy, a guy that we've had on our show before too. Highly confident. He came into this camp this time last year too. Big time confidence, had to earn the respect from his teammates, but there's a lot of veterans and some experience definitely on the defensive line and this linebacker room. You've got experience in a DB room. Just got some question marks in the safety room. But, gentlemen, this should be a pretty good fall camp for the defensive side, and they're going to have their work cut out for them going against this offense, which we talked about last week. There's loads of talent there on the offense, and you feel completely set there with a lot of depth. But defense, there's some position groups that could get a little thin here just working off of experience-wise. There's talent, but there's some raw talent that hasn't hit really the college level. But where would you guys like to start off with?
Probably the ends or D tackles.
I was going to say save the best for last.
No.
I say that. Are we going to go reverse? Let's go reverse. Let's start with the hot topic. I mean, this is really what we need to be talking about, and let's talk safety. Florida State, I think, is at a thin position. They tried to do some work in the transfer portal, but not a whole ton of crazy success there to get the job done, and you're going to rely on your in-house guys, and there might be some names moved around. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But Florida State is going to bring back Akeem Dent, who spent last season a little bit injured here and there. And then you've got Shyheim Brown, too, who has some big-time upside. I think, Dustin, all of us here, we're really excited for a full year of Shyheim Brown because he made some flashes last year, but he just looks like an overall just, a decent, smart, friggin' player. I'm just so excited for Shyheim Brown. Like, I'm already thinking about that. I get to see him tomorrow, but hoping that he'll be a full, complete go for fall camp. But this is still a thin room, man. You're going to have to rely on some youngins like a KJ Kirkland, too, that we saw in spring who had flash here and there. What are y'all's thoughts on the safety room? What's going to have to be done just to feel FSU fans to feel a little bit more comfortable going into this 2023 season?
Without a doubt, this is the biggest question mark on the defense. Like you said, your projected starters, man, someone's stomach is going, but your projected starters are Akeem Dent and Shyheim Brown, like you said. Brown, all the potential in the world, and we're going to see as he elevates into a larger role with more snaps if he can continue to produce. I think with Akeem Dent, a very solid veteran that has made some contributions to Florida State over the years. Main thing for him is just staying healthy. Had a late season foot injury that limited him down the stretch of the 2022 season. Also wasn't fully healthy for parts of the offseason. So, I mean, we're going to see what he looks like tomorrow. And, Florida State, they are making a move on the roster. They are junior cornerback Kevin Knowles played the last 2 years at nickel for FSU, dealt with some injuries last year, but he's actually going to be transitioning over to the safety position, something that Mike Norvell confirmed today during his press conference and actually said that, he's excited to see Kevin Knowles in this new spot. Has made some really big impacts for Florida State during his first 2 years with the program, has now up to 190 pounds, and he came into Florida State at 160, so has made some serious strides with his body. It sounds like after missing the spring, he's pretty healthy at this point in time. We'll see if he's a full go out there tomorrow. But Florida State is going to have at least, 3 guys who have played some snaps before up there at safety. And then after that, you go to Ashlyn Barco, the JUCO transfer from Iowa Western. Like you said about KJ Kirkland, he was another guy that Mike Norvell had some really high remarks about today. Said Florida State feels like they got a guy in KJ Kirkland, and we're really impressed, and said some of the coaches noticed what he was bringing to the table during spring ball. So I think maybe that's a true freshman that can make an immediate impact and might be one of the guys from that 2023 class that plays the most during his first year on campus.
We're all super high on Kevin Knowles. We went into last season thinking he was going to take that next step, and it just never quite happened. I think this move to safety might be good for him because he's one of those players that you can move around anyways. I think he's going to really excel in that role. And, if, say, something happens to Akeem Dent or Shaheem Brown, they can't be full goes, I think he can more than fulfill those spots. But, it is a very thin group that's relying on a lot of inexperience and on a team that has, really high aspirations. It's not just the biggest question mark on the defense. You can argue it's the biggest question mark on the team, outside of returners, like returning, kick return, punt return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They've got to get this figured out for sure.
Yeah, I think Kevin Knowles for last year too was dealing with some injuries throughout the season, and that's something that really limited him, and seeing some development there. So if he's going to be, hopefully full go, which I think we're expecting for camp tomorrow, I'm interested to see how he mixes and meshes into that safety position, because if he can be a go and he can be reliable, that's what you need, man. And he's got the experience in this scheme of Adam Fuller, so he knows this defense very well. So if he can make that transition smooth, which I think he will, a very smart player too, puts himself in the right spots. I think Knowles can, hopefully make a turn there to help that depth at the safety position, because that is definitely a question mark for me. And I'm just really excited to see Brown, and I really want to see Akeem Dent stay healthy. Like if I can just keep Akeem Dent healthy, then that's a success for me this season for the safety room. But we'll see if KJ Kirkland, you fingers crossed, you don't have to see a lot of KJ Kirkland, the true freshman. But, hopefully that can happen maybe in the fourth quarter when Florida State's blowing out some of their opponents. But I don't want to see him in the second quarter. I don't want to see him at that. Yeah.
Got to mention, but real quick, got to mention Conrad Hussey as well. Florida State's top defensive back signee in that 2023 class, recently got to FSU as a summer enrollee. Tomorrow will be his first practice as a Seminole as well. And, there are a lot of expectations for him coming into Florida State as a highly ranked safety. We'll see if he's able to rise to the occasion quickly. But, just based off the freshman coming in, I feel like Kirkland's got to have the better shot to make an impact after going through spring ball and, the tour of duty, being with the team throughout the whole offseason. I feel like is going to benefit him a ton moving into fall.
Let's jump over to cornerback, and we'll talk like a little bit mix of nickel here as well. But Florida State bringing back who I thought was a stud last season for FSU. People still giving some question marks about him. I don't understand why, but Renardo Green will be making his return to the cornerback position. And then, you kind of got some little bit of question marks here. I would say is a little bit more of a slower start for Fentrell Cypress, more than we expected, maybe from Virginia. But honestly, you're getting a hold of a whole new playbook. That doesn't bother me too much until we see, maybe, unless there's some lackluster understanding of the system going through camp, then maybe there should be some question marks there. But because you've got Azare Thomas, who's been in this program now, he's going into his second year, who got a good amount of playing time last year. He's got the physical attributes, and Florida State and Coach Surtain, Adam Fuller, extremely high on Azare. And then you've got Jerrion Jones as well, just trying to figure out where they're going to put him, nickel position. There's definitely a few things that Florida State's going to have to figure out here, but they've got the talent. It's just depending on, Fentrell Cypress and getting down the system. But what he already did at Virginia. He's an impactful player, and it would not be surprised whatsoever to see him starting on the opposite side of Renardo Green.
It's going to be a really interesting battle. Like you kind of alluded to, I think Renardo Green pretty much has a starting spot locked down, and then it's kind of going to be the battle between Fentrell. I think Fentrell and Jerrion Jones, and then also AZ is going to be sprinkled in there some for that battle for the other outside cornerback spot. And then inside at nickel, really seems like Greedy Vance is probably the favorite here. And then you're going to, depending on how Jerry Jones does in that battle on the outside, he's probably going to contribute in there at nickel as well. But I mean, regardless of who ends up in that starting lineup, you've got 5 really experienced, really talented cornerbacks coming into the 2023 season. I think Fentrell ultimately ends up winning that starting spot. But, it sounds like AZ has made some serious strides this offseason. Jerry Jones really became solid for Florida State during the back half of that 2022 season. I think he's a little bit underrated going into this fall camp with what he can provide. And he's also in excellent shape. And then Greedy Vance as well. Seems another guy who has made some serious strides this offseason. Obviously, he's a little bit of a smaller cornerback and a little bit tough for him to get in there and run support at times. But, I mean, this is a guy that led Florida State in interceptions a season ago. So I think with those 5, you've got a very solid nucleus at cornerback, and we'll see if maybe some of those true freshmen are able to get into the mix. But I would imagine those guys and maybe Kevin Knowles as well, working a little 2-time action between safety and cornerback, will soak up the majority of snaps.
There's a ton of talent in this corner room. I mean, you're bringing in a guy that was first team All ACC last season and preseason All ACC, which we didn't get a chance to talk about yet. You have Jerry Jones, who came a long way last season and is, I think a good corner now. I think he's unfairly hated on. You have Azare Thomas, who everyone in that building is really high on. You have Renardo Green, who, I think is as talented as anybody on the roster. He really showed up a big way, especially early on last season. I know he dealt with a couple of nagging injuries, but it's just such a talented group. I can't wait to see how they find a way to get everybody involved. Fentrell Cypress gets caught up to speed on the system. That combo of him, Renardo Green, Jerry Jones, and Greedy Vance, that's a really good group.
And I mentioned it last week. I don't think Florida State, Logan, you said it as well, with Fentrell Cypress kind of having a slow start there to spring ball and struggling a little bit at times. I don't think Florida State's worried about it at all. I brought it up last week, but Mike Norvell, said that they've already got an all ACC player coming into Tallahassee in Fentrell, and they think he's just going to be on an even bigger level moving now that he's with the Seminoles and moving into this 2023 season. So it sounds like there's another level to his game that FSU feels like they can unlock.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Fentrell. Getting to spend the summer too, working against these wide receivers too, getting a feel for what they're like, new system as well. Fentrell, I think, is going to be fine, and he's going to be developed. But yeah, I'm high on Greedy Vance. I'm super high on that kid. He brings great energy. He's going to be a leader on this defense too, so keep an eye out for him. But yeah, he's going to be a big-time impactful player for Florida State this upcoming season, leading Florida State last year, like you said, Dustin, in interceptions. He puts himself in the right spot at the right time. So very, very high on Greedy. And meanwhile, we're over here in the chat. We're making relationships happen. We've got Ariel in here, and we've got Tad. Seems like they're going to start dating here. This is what we do at Hear the Spear, man. I mean, creating relationships. Who knows? This might be our future here on YouTube. So
match.com/no-game-day.
This might be the first robot marriage I've ever seen.
I don't know if it's robots or anything, but Ariel, Tad, send us a DM if y'all end up taking a picture together or something. We need to get our recognition that we made this happen.
Confused.
On our Fall Camp Defensive Preview podcast here. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. If you want to find your future wife or husband, we got you on Hear the Spear. Let's jump over. Now, where do we want to go? We want to go linebacker. We're trimming down to the best. And that's going to be the defensive line, DE, all that kind of stuff. So let's talk linebacker here. Randy Shannon coming into his second year as linebackers coach. He's bringing the same unit back again, at least his starting unit. But DJ Lundy, who put on, another 10 pounds this offseason. You've got Kalen DeLoach, who represented Florida State at the ACC kickoff, Austin. And then, Florida State still has the talent. And I'm over here just still looking at the chat. I don't know why I'm looking at the chat. I'm just getting too much distraction. Dustin, did you hide your camera because you were laughing?
No, my dog was going crazy.
Oh, yeah? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, this linebacker unit, man, led by Kalen DeLoach, DJ Lundy, Tatum Bethune. The big time to have Tatum Bethune come back too for another season, who was also banged up. I think he told the media, he was banged up from top to bottom going through the season last year, but was still able to play. So a full healthy Tatum Bethune will be a big time factor for Florida State in this linebacker room. And then you've got some younger guys too that have came. Omar Graham Jr., who I think is going to see the field quite a bit in 2023. Blake Nicholson too, who we've heard from the coaching staff really high on him as well. You've also got Ward in there, a youngin, but Florida State. If Blake Nicholson and Omar Graham, I think, and too, if Ward is able to make some strides there, I feel a lot more comfortable in this linebacker room than I did earlier in the offseason.
This room doesn't worry me for this year. This is a concern for 2024. You know what you have in Kalen DeLoach, you know what you have in Tatum Bethune, you know what you have in DJ Lundy, and you only play 2 linebackers anyways. So as long as you're rotating those 3 guys, you're going to really like what you have at linebacker. It's when you have to, like, if and when you're going to have to rely on those Omar Grahams and DeMarco Wards and those Brian Courtneys, that's when the concern happens. But like I said, that's a concern for next year. It doesn't worry me at all for this year, unless, God forbid, knock on wood, a couple injuries happen.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed my point. I feel like Florida State's in a very good spot this year when it comes to linebackers, returning your top 3 guys in the rotation for the second straight year. They all know their roles in this defense. They're all pretty healthy at the moment, and feels like they should just continue to build on what they were able to produce last year, which was probably the best year by a Florida State linebacker group. And I mean, a hot minute. We've seen some bad Florida State linebacker rooms over the last couple of years. I think you've really got to like what you have in this trio. It is going to take some staying healthy for those 3 guys, but I mean, it's doable after what we saw last year. And then I think Omar Graham, he's ready to jump into that 4 spot in the rotation that was previously held by Brendan Gant. Sounds like, speaking to Randy Shannon, Omar has made some real strides this offseason. He also credited the veterans in that room for, leading some of these guys. Tatum Bethune was someone that Florida State selected to break the rock to conclude the offseason workouts. Really shows the leadership role that he's taken since transferring in a year ago from UCF. That was something Mike Norvell addressed during his press conference, said that Tatum is one of the heartbeats of this team. And then also Kalen DeLoach, a guy who's been here as long as Jordan Travis, dating back to that 2019 season. One of the guys who has really seen it all when it comes to Willie Taggart's tenure and then the transition to Mike Norvell and everything that's taken place over the last couple of years. So you've got 2 really good veteran leaders up there at the top, and then DJ Lundy as well doing his thing. I think you've got to be excited with that room. And like you said, Austin, it's going to be a concern in 2024 because you're going to lose DeLoach, you're going to lose Bethune. We'll see what happens with Lundy, moving forward. But you're going to at least lose the top 2 guys in that room, and you're going to have to turn to some guys who have a lot of potential but haven't proved it yet. So it's going to be something to worry about in 24, but I feel like that's a room that is potentially a strength for FSU in 2023.
It would have been an extreme luxury if you could have had, Stephen X Jr. or Amari Gaynor or even Brendan Gant stick around for another season just to have that one more quality experienced option, but you still really like what you have there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, y'all couldn't have said it any better. I'm super high for Omar Graham Jr. as well. And I really liked what we saw developmental-wise from DJ Lundy in coverage last year. So he put on more pounds, though. But, I mean, when we saw him in the spring, though, that man was lean. And Randy Shannon gave him a lot of props during our, meeting with him going into, the spring, just talking about what he's done with his body. So he's added on 10 more pounds. So interested to see how he looks. It's mainly just for fullback size, honestly. That's mainly for the Lundy package this upcoming fall. All right, let's get to the fun part here. The goodies, probably Florida State's one of their biggest strengths going into this season, and it's going to be Florida State's defensive line. Do we want to start on the edge, or do we want to go on the inside first? I feel like we start on the edge, and then we move on the inside because there's a lot to discuss more, I think, on the inside than anything. But let's start on the outside of this line. Florida State bringing back a first-round talent with Jared Verse. Put on a show week 1 in college football against LSU. You just saw the capabilities and the energy that he brings, the effort. It's just nonstop. Big time leader now, jumping into that leadership role, earning the respect from his teammates, and the tenacity. That's probably one of the biggest reasons I want to get up there tomorrow is see Jared Verse's attitude and his energy that he brings. It comes all the way to the media, man. It gets you hyped to get in there for practice, and I'm really interested to see who he's going to be trash talking. That's just who he is. But once he's off the field, it's over. And, he's a good guy in the locker room. But, that, and then you got Pat Payne. These are going to be your starters on the defensive end side of the ball. And, Pat Payne, there's a lot of things that I think still you want to see him improve on. He's showed some flashes definitely in last year. But, getting to the quarterback and the pass rusher, some things that he'd get better on. He's really nice in their run game, and he's only getting better there. But Florida State highlighted by those two guys, and you've got a transfer with Gilbert Edmond too that I think Florida State is hoping to get some impact from him this upcoming season too. But just overall, there's some other names too to talk about. What are y'all's thoughts on this room going into this season?
I'm interested to see how it plays out because, like you said, you kind of know who's going to be at the top of the rotation with Jared Verse soaking up a ton of snaps, Patrick Payton continuing to increase his role coming off that campaign where he was named the ACC's Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then you have Gilbert Edmond coming in from South Carolina, who was able to go through spring practice with the team and is continuing to acclimate himself. Seems like he'll be a solid number 3 for Florida State in that rotation. But then after that, you've got to find a reliable 4 and 5 that you can lean on at some points in games. I think the two most probable options to potentially fill that role, Byron Turner, who impressed some during the spring and has continued to add weight and develop. We'll see if he's finally ready to make an impact in 2023 after dealing with some injuries during his career. And then you've also got the JUCO coming in, Jaden Jones, who Florida State was able to sign as a member of that 2023 class, one of the top junior college prospects in the entire country. He was limited during the spring, still working his way back from an ACL injury, but JP confirmed to me today that he's a full go for the fall. Florida State still going to ramp him up slowly as he gets going, but it sounds like, he's ready to get into that competition, to get into the mix at defensive end. So a ton of talent there at the top of the unit, but just depending on how things go throughout the season, injuries, things like that, you're going to need to find some guys throughout this fall camp that can potentially contribute on the edge. And I'm also not counting out the possibility, we're going to get to the interior guys, but Braden Fisk has the frame to play on the outside in certain packages. Dennis Briggs obviously began his career at Florida State as a defensive end and has kind of moved between that edge and interior throughout his career here in Tallahassee. So I think worst comes to worst, those are two guys that you can flex out in certain situations. So from the outside looking in, maybe there's a little more depth than you actually think.
I do have to correct you on one thing, Logan. Jared Verse does not trash talk. He has casual conversations.
Oh, they're casual. Okay.
According to Verse, they're just casual conversations.
I've heard a lot of interesting casual conversations at these practices. I will say that.
Yeah, but Dustin, you nailed it. It's what you have in your top 3 for the most part. It's really about who can step up in that 4 spot, whether it's Jaden Jones, whether it's Byron Turner. I think Florida State would prefer it be Byron Turner for him to take that next step forward. But they got to figure out something in that rotation just in case someone goes down with an injury or someone has to miss a drive or whatever. They got to get that figured out.
Yeah, I'm hoping, Byron Turner, looking at the weight changes, didn't put on a whole lot of pounds there, Dustin. So I'm hoping that, we see, I don't know. The biggest thing for him was just staying healthy, and he dealt with that throughout the year. And then we saw him in the latter half of the season going to bowl prep. We had a lot of flashes there, but, Florida State hoping to see some strides made from Bolden. But I will say, though, looking at Edmond, he's probably one of the most athletic ones in that room. That guy can move, and I'm interested to see how that works with his pass rush as well. Doesn't have the much power, definitely, of Jared Verse. Not anybody about the country can do that right now of his caliber, but extremely athletic. So interested to see what he'll look like this fall camp. And, he's going to have some good, this right here is iron sharpens iron. Florida State's got some good offensive tackles right here. I think that's just only going to help them, get better as they get prepared for their season kickoff against LSU. Now let's move into the interior defensive line to finish off this episode. This is where the goodies are. It's just stacked with talent and with experience too. It's not just talent, but with college experience. Still waiting on a waiver here from Darrell Jackson, but just starting off here, Fabian Lovett, guy that's been with the program for a long while. Didn't know if he'd be staying or not. Dealt with an injury during the LSU game there at the very end of the fourth quarter. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy to think about that he dealt with that throughout the season? You're hoping now you'll get a full caliber, healthy Fabian Lovett, at least get into week 1. But Braden Fisk comes in as a transfer. You got Joshua Farmer, where there was a whole, remember our Joshua Farmer episodes, man, when all that drama was going on and chatter about him hitting the transfer portal. Oh my God, he's going to go with Daryl Jackson now to Miami. What's happening here? Yeah, Joshua Farmer comes back. And then you've got Daniel Lyons too, who Dustin, you and I are very high on, and has really made some good developmental strides with Coach Hagan's. This whole defensive line room is stacked. You got Dennis Briggs as well in here, depending on how they're going to use him. It's just wild. And we're still waiting on Daryl Jackson here on getting his waiver. It just seems like the NCAA is going to maybe potentially just screw FSU here, which would definitely suck. But thoughts on this defensive line room, guys? And then you've got some youngins. You got some guys that haven't gotten a lot of playing time, like Ayobame Tafase, who brings a lot of energy, extremely strong. Can provide a nice bull rush down up the middle. It just doesn't stop, guys. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, we've talked about some deep and talented defensive line rooms at Florida State, but I mean, man, this is making a run at the best one in recent history. Just, I mean, looking at the room, the guys in it, you've really got 6 or 7 names that can enter that starting lineup, and I don't think anyone would really blink about it. And you didn't even end up mentioning Malcolm Ray, who was a guy that started games for Florida State last year and was out during the spring recovering from an injury. There's just so many guys. And I think Florida State, this is really going to be – it's going to depend on the matchup and the opponent they're placing. I think they'll have different fronts for, different schemes and stuff like that. But it's a heck of a defensive line with the amount of versatility across the entire unit. And like I said earlier, there's guys in this room that could potentially play some defensive end if needed. You got to be really excited because last year Florida State, they had a solid nucleus there at the top of that defensive line, but then guys got banged up throughout the year, and we really saw the play deteriorate throughout the 2022 season. I think you're in a position now where, if Fabian Lovett is forced to miss a couple weeks or Joshua Farmer gets dinged up and is out for a game, you've got enough guys behind them to not replace them, but play at enough a level where it's not some massive drop-off like we saw at times last year. I mean, think back to the first game without Fabian Lovett. FSU goes to Louisville on a Friday night, and I mean, man, they were just gushing Florida State up the middle on some of those runs and just absolutely made the defensive line look silly. I think Florida State's in a position for that not to happen again in 2023 if some guys go down.
And you didn't even mention the NC State game. Florida State lost the NC State game because they didn't have Fabian Lovett.
And a BS targeting call.
Oh, yeah, that too. The amount of talent and depth Florida State has in the trenches on both sides, the offensive line and defensive line, is just absolutely absurd. You legitimately have 9 guys in this defensive tackle room that you feel good about, and only 2 can get on the field at a time. It's absolutely insane. Like you mentioned, if someone has to miss a week or if someone gets dinged up and has to miss a drive or whatever, they have a number of options to choose from. Malcolm Ray showed some real flashes towards the end of last season, and he's going to be the 9th defensive tackle. Like, it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, too, when we were talking about Jamie Robinson being gone, Robert Cooper, he's been with the program for so long, but his impact, there'd be a few times in games, you would see it, but I think Fabo is super excited to have Braden Fisk alongside with him, dude. Like, it's gonna be 2 different animals being in there, if we're being honest. Like,
I think everyone's excited to have Fisk there.
Yeah,
and Jared Verse was talking about it.
Yeah, Jared Verse. I was just about to bring that up, Austin. Jared Verse was saying that Braden Fisk brings that same type of energy, which I don't know if that's like going to be available to be an option during camp.
The exact quote was, "He's the only person I've ever met that can match my intensity." That's a scary sentence.
That is extremely scary. That's ridiculous. People have forgotten about Braden Fisk. I've been talking about him this whole entire offseason. I know that he wasn't able to be a go in the spring, and he was still rehabbing and such. But whenever he walked into practice, there's a different kind of attitude that he brings, and we're going to have a whole ton of videos and photos coming out tomorrow when those guys arrive. But he's one of those like, oh shit, practice is about to begin and it's about to suck if I'm an offense. That's just kind of what he looks like coming in. And Jared versus Jared versus, it's going to be the same way. It's going to be a nightmare for the next 2 hours for you. So to have that kind of energy come in and that attitude is exactly what Florida State as a program, as a football team needed. And Jared Verse brought that last year. It got guys out of their comfort zone. Nobody could just sit there and be quiet. Either you nut up or you shut up. And that's exactly what Braden Fisk and Jared Verse can bring this defensive line. But super excited about the Western Michigan defensive line transfer. I'm ready to play football. I'm sweating. I'm ready to go. We're here, baby.
Less than 24 hours from now, the first practice of fall camp will be over.
Yep. And let us know in the chat, too, if you want us to do an instant reaction podcast. We'll get that done for you guys. If not, we'll talk to you guys next Wednesday. But it just feels like there's too many good storylines that, we could jump on for 15, 20 minutes on here and give you guys some good scoop from what we saw. But
next week, we're going live on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, next week we're gonna go live on Tuesday because Dustin is having to travel with Tommy over to Jacksonville for the doubleheader of practices at UNF that Mike Norvell is going to be bringing the team over for. So a Tuesday night one, I don't know if we'll be able to have VZ or not, but
I'll make it work.
We can even push it back a little bit too. So, but yeah, this was a great podcast, gentlemen. We did our offensive preview, defensive preview. We'll discuss special teams. I think we talked about some capabilities here, punt return, kick return. I think we'll have a better understanding tomorrow too. But
I'll tell you what, I don't think JP was expecting to get a question today about FSU's long snapper transfer.
Long snapper transfer.
But I had to ask.
Did you? Oh, you did.
Should we talk about the long snapper watch list?
James Rosenberry getting some.
I don't have it up here on my screen because there's just so much stuff.
He was my guy. Whenever we did that long snapper preview, that was who I went with. And
yeah,
I mean, look at him now.
Let's jump through this real quick. But punt returner, Ja'Kai Douglas, we saw him getting some work in. Vondravius Jacobs, I believe, too. Right during the spring, Dustin was getting a little bit of work, and then we're expecting Dustin Hill to also get an opportunity here at punt return. We'll see Trey Benson kick return. Could also be Dustin Hill potentially at kick return as well. Ja'Kai Douglas.
Deuce Spann, it sounded like really is impressed at kick return as of late.
That's who I want to see.
Keziah Holmes and Winston Wright also got some mentions from Mike Norvell. And then, for the punt return, I mean, we already kind of mentioned all these guys, but he talked about Toa Philly, Douglas, and Destin Hill specifically at those positions. But I would imagine FSU is going to have, 5 or 6 guys working at both of those, especially because you don't have Micah Pittman anymore. You don't have a player on the roster who's returned to punt at the college level or returned to punt last season for Florida State. So, I mean, this is huge because that was an area of concern during the 2021, especially the 2021 season. I mean, you think back to that final game of the year. I don't know if anyone remembers it, but a muff punt in Gainesville was pretty much Florida State's hopes of getting to the postseason. That's an extremely important spot for FSU. And I mean, same thing with the kicking unit, which is going to be an extremely close battle between Ryan Fitzgerald and Tyler Keltner. I think Fitzgerald has a slight edge based on what he did during the spring, was a little bit more consistent, had a little bit longer range than Keltner. But I mean, it's very close. A couple good practices from Keltner might be enough to swing it in the other direction.
As big of a special teams guy as Norvell is, he'll get it figured out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. I would really like to see Deuce Spann at kick return make that next step just because of the speed that he can bring there. Imagine him and Destin Hill being back there. Woo! Goodness gracious.
I'm fine with that.
Yep. So we'll see. It's going to be a fun fall camp. We've got a fun month ahead before Florida State takes on LSU in a top 10 matchup. We'll also have AP rankings come out next Tuesday. So maybe that's a good spot to do our show. So we'll actually have the rankings for Florida State and LSU before Mike Norvell takes on Brian Kelly for the 80th time, it feels like. But yeah, a ton of coverage coming y'all's way all over the place on our socials. Make sure you're following us on TikTok. We got 30,000 on TikTok. I was like, what in the world is going on there? But we have 30,000 on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on I'm still saying Twitter. I'm not saying X. We're still on Twitter. And we're all across on YouTube too. Going to be posting a lot for you guys, interviews, shorts, everything of that nature. So make sure you guys are following us, and also get in our Discord. We've cleaned it up a little bit. A lot of good discussions going on there. It's in our description down below on podcast streams and on YouTube. So hit that Discord link down below and join. It's free to hop on there with 2,200 plus FSU fans. But yeah, we're here. Football season has arrived in Tallahassee. Looking forward to being up there in the A50 alongside Dustin and our guy Tommy. Full coverage coming to you guys. Make sure you're following us on socials. We will see you guys next Tuesday evening. Don't really have a time set, but we're going to hopefully be at the same time at 7 o'clock. So yeah, as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit the like button before you leave. Over 100 likes on there tonight. So appreciate everybody hopping on there. And yeah, that's going to be it. We'll see what KJ Bolden decides to do on Saturday at 7 p.m. Everybody, have a great rest of y'all's week, and we will talk to you guys next Tuesday, hoping for 7 p.m. See you guys.
Where'd he go? We're still live.
Wait, what?
We're
Oopsies.
still live.